Hi, my name is Nannette Plascencia. I work at a Amazon facility called ONT8 in Moreno Valley, California. I have worked there since 2015. And a couple years ago, I started organizing my warehouse with some coworkers.
Hi, my name is Baez. I'm 28 years old. I was formerly employed with Amazon, but was recently terminated. I worked at Amazon in the past. I was there for a year, and I ended up leaving the company to go find a job at a school district. But I went back for a seasonal position, and that's when I was terminated, in my opinion, for my union activity.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Working People, a podcast about the lives, jobs, dreams, and struggles of the working class today. Brought to you in partnership with In These Times magazine and the Real News Network, produced by Jules Taylor, and made possible by the support of listeners like you. So as y'all heard, we've got a really special and important mini-cast for y'all today. I am honored to be joined by Nannette and Yvonne, who are calling in from my home state of California. Obviously, as you guys know, because of the conversations that we've had on this show at the Real News Network, but also because of, all the great coverage that we've been seeing around the country, there's been a lot of really vital organizing happening at Amazon warehouses. We've been following the organizing efforts in Bessemer, Alabama, where workers, were trying to unionize with the retail, wholesale, and department store union 2 years ago. We have been there talking to folks on Staten Island in New York, who shocked the world by successfully voting to unionize the JFK 8 warehouse last April. And earlier this year, in January, the National Labor Relations Board finally, 10 months after that historic union victory, certified the election results. Amazon, of course, the second largest private employer in the United States, owned by one of the richest men in the world, Jeff Bezos, continues to thrash and whine and flip over the chessboard and refuse to acknowledge the election results in the JFK 8 union election. They have vowed to, try to, continue to challenge the election, to throw out the results, do anything and everything in their power except come to the bargaining table and hash out a first contract with those workers who won their union election fair and square and unionize with the Amazon Labor Union back in April of 2022. But I say all that to say that, it's not just, in Alabama and New York where this organizing is happening. Hopefully you have heard about the valiant and vital efforts to organize at the ONT8 warehouse in California. But if you haven't, that is our goal today, to get you up to speed on the organizing that's happening there, how that organizing campaign has evolved over the years, including, during the middle of a deadly pandemic, and ultimately what we all can do around the U.S. and beyond to support workers like Nannette and Yvonne in their fight for a union at ONT8 and beyond. So I really, really appreciate you guys taking the time to sit down and chat with us today. I know you've got a lot going on. I know it's a Saturday, so, I'm just very, very grateful to you both. And I know we've got a lot to talk about here. And so I wanted to start by just getting to know a bit more about you guys. As we talked about before we started recording, on the podcast, we really, really try to get to know everyone that we're talking to, learn more about their backstory, how they came to be the people they are and do the work that they do. And since we have a sort of shortened amount of time here, I wanted to do a kind of condensed version of that and ask if we could talk a bit about your paths to working at Amazon. like if you could just kind of talk us through what it was like, from maybe you saw a job opening, you apply. What were you expecting going into it? What was it like walking into that massive warehouse? And what sort of work do you do there? So, Nannette, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so I started working there in 2015, right before I put in a job application there. I heard from other people that I was working with at another job, a retail store, that there was an Amazon opening up soon, not too far away from where I was working at the time. So I went to apply, and I did it more because we heard rumors that working there was going to be really great. They talked a lot about how they heard it was a great facility to work for. Amazon cares about their workers, and they were going to pay well. And so I went and applied, and I got the job. They were hiring a lot of people at that time because they barely opened up. So when I finally got in there for orientation, it was great. I mean, it was brand new. Everything there was brand new. The break rooms were nice. They had nice lockers. And we had 3 days of orientation, and they walked us around the whole facility. And they would always talk to us about, the positives, and we're working here as a team. We care about each other. We help each other out. And so my first year working there actually wasn't bad. It was pretty good the first year. Then as time went on, I noticed things like being able to move up or move into a different work area became harder. And I kept getting the runaround. A lot of people there would get the runaround when you would go talk to a manager or your lead. They would be like, yeah, we're going to get you in. We're going to give you this class so you can move into this position. And it never happened. And so I just kind of went in a circle with them about trying to move up. And then if I went into another work department, it was kind of similar to what I was already doing. And it was pretty boring. And it had to do with always dealing with rate and TOT. Those two things go together for the position that I do there. It's called prep. And what I do is I prep the items from the vendor. The vendor will, they drop a pallet to me, and then I just start picking off the pallet. And what I do is I process those items within the box. And the vendor might want special things done to it first. Like they might want this item bubble bagged because it's glass, or they might want it bagged because it might leak. So I deal with things like that. I have to prep the item, and then after that, I send it on its way in a tote. So you have to process so many units per hour, else you could get written up. So, and at the same time, we also deal with something called time off tasks, where your algorithm from the computer, if you're idle, not doing anything for a certain processing an item within a certain amount of time, then you also get hit with time off tasks. So those two things I have to deal with while I'm working. And from there, I just stayed within that area, because then there's another one that's similar to it, and it deals with the same things. I never got to go up higher or do something different, like being in a learning center or just something different. I was never able to do that. And so that's where I'm actually at to this day. I've been in the same department called prep now for about 3 years. And that's where I landed, and that's where I'm at. I basically just do that all day for 10 hours. And because of that, I've never gotten written up or a final warning or anything like that on my record. All those years I've been there. And I get a final written warning about time off task. And I was in shock because I have a high rate. I know what I'm doing. I've been there so long. And I got it. And I felt helpless. Like there was no one there to help me through it to get this off my record. Or I didn't have a voice. I felt helpless. I did not think it was right at all for what they did to me. And from that moment, that's what actually pushed me to say, enough is enough. I'm done with this. I played your games. I've talked to management. I tried to make things better in my workplace, in my department, and no one hears me out. And then I get a write-up like this, and I felt I worked so hard here, and all I get is a write-up for it. And that's what actually pushed me to start to try to unionize my facility because of that write-up. Because I felt so helpless and I was so upset for what they did to me. I said, enough is enough. And that's when I started talking to my coworkers and I started looking into organizing my facility because of that write-up.
I started working at Amazon the first time in 2018. My first day was May 15th. Before that, I was living in Hawaii for a little bit for my dad's job. I was there for like 2 years. I moved back to California and I lived with my aunt, and I was just, looking for a job. And I had a lot of crappy jobs before that. I was working as like at a gas station overnight. I was a day porter at an apartment complex. I worked as a dishwasher at a pizza place. And then I worked at a warehouse where we manufactured like water filtration systems. I ended up getting fired from there because it was like a staffing agency. They said my term was over or whatever. And then I got a job as a like a fry cook, prep cook at a sushi restaurant. And I got fired from there too because the manager, my two coworkers were like undocumented immigrants and they didn't speak almost any English. One of my coworkers, it's a long story, but anyway, I defended them. He was making them come in on a Sunday, even though one of them was trying to have her doctor appointment that she had been canceling to cover for the position that I was covering, right? That I got hired for. She was covering it. And I said, hey man, like she's trying to go to the doctor. Well, they fired me for it. He didn't like me for it. So I got fired. I was jobless for a little bit. And so a friend of mine told me they were hiring at Amazon. They were opening a new building in a place called Eastvale, California. It's about 30 minutes from where we live, where Nannette and I live. And I was like, well, dude, I mean, I got to get a job, so let's go. So we go, we do our little drug test, all that stuff. And the building was, like I said, brand new. It had just opened a few months beforehand. I think it was in March. And I was there, and at the time, they told us that the building was the largest in the network. It was the biggest Amazon ever built. And it is a massive building. It is just lengthwise, it's ridiculously long. And my department was 4 stories tall. There's 4 floors of my department. The other half of the building is 2 floors. So it's like, it's like the packing department was the 2 floors. And my department, like picking and counting and all that stuff was stow was 4 floors. And kind of like Nannette said, at first it was not too bad. I mean, I didn't like it because I'm not a fan of Amazon. I don't shop at Amazon, things like that. So I was already kind of not feeling it working for a place I don't want to work at. But truth be told, it wasn't the worst job ever. It was relatively chill. We still had 5/8. We still had 5 days of 8 hours. And then, so that wasn't too bad. I get out relatively early. It wasn't too bad. I got into the, sort of like workers, labor movement, stuff like that, just through, having read like a lot of famous thinkers like the anarchists and all that kind of stuff. So I was always interested in wanting to do something like that and organize a union or whatever. I was part of the IWW for a little bit and I was trying to, organize the place with that. But many people were really, really scared to even say the word or even hear the word union at Amazon. I had a coworker, great guy. He was a really hard worker. He'd been at Amazon for like 4 years. Really nice dude. One day I went up to him and I was like, hey man, what do you think about a union? And as soon as I said it, he said, let me stop you right there, buddy. I don't ever want you to say that word near me or don't even talk to me about it. Just go away. And I literally talked to him about it. He apologized. He was a little too stern with me, but he said, I'm not gonna lie, dude. I've seen people be fired that same day they even mentioned the word. So don't mess up my career, my job. I was like, okay, I respect that. Never brought it up to him again. Other people kind of similar, like, hey man, I'm not interested, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I was at that building for a year. I did peak season there. And, it was an interesting. I still remember to this day standing on the fourth floor by the elevator, overlooking the second floor of the packing department. And all you see is this massive like array of conveyors and lights and people running back and forth, packing. It looked like a sweatshop, honestly. And it was interesting to be in the belly of the beast, in the whale, seeing just the whole thing. So after peak season, I had asked for like a transfer, or right before that, I asked for a transfer to a closer building that was closer to my house because the drive was too much. California traffic is ridiculous. So I got transferred to a building called LGB6. I should mention the other building was called LGB3. I transferred to LGB6. And that building was what's called a non-sort. So it's kind of items that are really big: bicycles, refrigerators, patio umbrellas, you really name it. Bigger stuff that can't be put in a box, in a tiny box. We would drive what are called order pickers, or OPs. It's like a forklift where you wear a vest and a harness and you elevate up like 50 feet back down or whatever. And that building was really different. I mean, it was really quiet. There's not much noise going around, but there was some bullshit there. The day that I quit was because we were being harassed about TOT over and over. Everyone was being harassed. Oh, you got to be on your TOT, blah, 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 this and that. But a lot of my coworkers and I were really curious to just know what exactly is the policy for TOT. When does it start accruing? How many minutes before we get in trouble? How does it work? What is it? They said it's scan to scan, but I'm like, we would say, well, when you scan an item and you put it in your bin, do you start accruing TOT then? Is there a grace period? Is there a 4-minute grace period and then it accrues and then you gather those 4 minutes? We just want to know the details. We're going to harass us about it. You might as well tell us the details. I mean, I think it's only fair. So one day at what we call stand-up, they're just kind of like little, pre-game meetings before you go to work in the mornings and before lunch or after lunch, excuse me. I had a coworker who asked, I would argue, a really dumb question because it's one that we all know the answer to. He asked us, we were all tired, we wanted to go home, and he was like, I have a question. Can we go home? And it's like, well, yeah, buddy. I mean, we know the policy. If you got PTO and UPT, you can go and come as you please, as long as you have the time. So yeah, you can. But the PA was like, oh, well, that's so funny. No, you can't. You can leave if you want. Ha, ha, ha. And I said, well, if this guy's going to ask this question, we all know the answer to it. Let me ask one that we all want to know the answer to. And I said, yeah, I have a question about PTOT. What are the details? When does it start accruing? Blah, blah, blah. And as I'm asking the question, the other PA just shuts me down and says, okay, no, sorry, but go to work, everybody. I'm going to talk to you on the side, Ivan. And I was like, oh, wow. She took me to the side and she's like, why do you want to know this? And I'm like, well, because, I mean, you guys are harassing us and I think we have the right to know what the details are. And she's like, well, if you're just doing your job, you should have to worry about it. And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess you're kind of right, true, but don't we have the right to know at least? And then if I want to neglect my duties as a worker, then that's up to me, So that day just really pissed me off that this guy could ask a question that we all know the answer to. It's clearly obvious. You can go and come and you can be late to work. And as long as you have time, you can leave early as long as you have the time. Why is he asking this? And it's so funny, haha, funny. But I'm asking a serious question. All of us were genuinely wanting to know. And I'm being harassed about it, being pulled aside. I go back to work and my coworkers, drive up to me like, oh, dude, what happened? What should tell you? And I'm like, hey, man, well, she just told me like basically to shut up and get back to work, basically. And I was really pissed. And I said, you know what? I had no PTO and no UPT. So if I were 1 minute late, either clocking in or back from lunch, or I leave even a minute early, I would have been fired. It's a terminable offense to go negative on UPT. So I said, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to work here anymore. I got to find a job I actually care about, that I feel good doing. So I put my OP away, took my harness off, walked to the clock out machine and beep, and then automatically made me go negative. So then I quit. On paper, I was fired because their system said I went negative, so they terminated me. But in reality, I just quit. I walked out, basically. That was 2019 in June that I quit. I got a job at a school district. Really loved the job. It was phenomenal. I ended up losing that job for reasons that I don't want to get into right now, but what I would argue are total, really whack, dumb reasons. This is sort of during the pandemic. So I'm working basically from home with the kids on Zoom. So I was kind of privileged in that respect. Other people were basically putting their lives on the line to get people their packages on time, while I'm over here chilling at home in my PJs. So I was not really in the thick of it during the pandemic. And then I lost my job, so I had the money coming in. I was really privileged during the pandemic. After the pandemic, at like 2021, we go back in person, and that's when I lose my job. 2022, I was unemployed, but I wanted to do something with my life. I couldn't just be bumming it all day. So I said, well, let's go back to school. I go to school in the spring of 2022 and the fall of 2022, but the money was running out. I had money saved up from the pandemic and just from working or whatever. So I needed a job, and Amazon pretty much hires you as long as you got a pulse. If you got a pulse and you're breathing, you're hired. So I got the job at ONTA, and I didn't want to work there, but I got to eat. I got to pay my bills. So I'm there, and one day I was approached by a coworker. I don't want to say her name, but she, I'm getting a scanner from the cage, it was called. And she's like, "Are you interested in joining a union?" And I was like, "Yes, of course I am. What do you mean?" She's like, "Oh, we're having like a union meeting this week. It's Friday or Saturday. If you want to come by." And yeah, definitely. So I show up, and that's where I met Nannette. That's where I met the other members of the committee. And that day, I joined the committee, and I'm here organizing with them. From there, we had like captive audience meetings that I pushed back at. We had a rally that I attended, had a sign. I think I made it pretty obvious that I was pro-union. I'm trying to get this going, made pretty obvious. You can't really deny who I was. And so eventually I was terminated for, we'll get to that later, I guess, but for really dumb, kind of not dumb reasons, but really convenient reasons for Amazon. And so right now we're 2023. I'm back in school, and here we are now.
Man, it's just like, it's so wild to hear this, and I hope that it's really kind of sinking in for folks listening, right? Because I feel like there's a sort of disconnect, right? When everyone was excited when the ALU won their election on Staten Island, right? And I think that people kind of just assumed it was like, oh, they won their union election, so all the horror stories we've been hearing about Amazon are going to change. And they haven't, right? It's like I want to impress upon people that even for the folks on Staten Island, if you watched our recent interview at the Real News Network, like shit has not changed, and the fight is still very much ongoing. Like all the horror stories and even like the less horrific but still unacceptable stories that we've been hearing from folks for years working at Amazon. The time off task that you've been hearing Nannette and Yvonne talk about, right? Just these sort of like shadowy, black boxed, algorithms that are telling you, whether or not you're going to get fired based on how fast you're going. And I think workers have a right to know, well, what are these metrics based on? How much time are we being given to accomplish these tasks? Who is making the decisions of how much time it should take? We're the ones who are actually doing it. So shouldn't, these like metrics be calibrated to, like the work that we do? This is very similar to what we hear talking to gig workers, right? Folks who were lured into the gig industry because it promised that we could be our own bosses, we could make our own hours, only to find out that essentially like our boss is our phone and the algorithms that are owned by, the companies that run them, whether that be Shipt, whether that be Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Postmates, right? These proprietary algorithms, they can change at the drop of a hat, and workers can see their take-home pay go down every week, and they are told they have no right to know what those changes were. How their ratings are being calculated, how much, just like the time off task issue, like how long the algorithm is telling you it should take to carry out this order, yada, yada, yada. If something comes up that you don't have control over, maybe there's a long line in the grocery store and there's only like one cashier there. That's not your fault, but you're the one who has to bear the brunt of it, right? Like, so I hope that those connections are kind of becoming apparent as y'all listen to Nannette and Yvonne sort of talk about this. And I also just wanted to kind of comment on one other thing, because this hits very close to home, both geographically, because I'm from Southern California, but also because 10 years ago, I was working in warehouses, much like the ones that y'all have been working at Amazon. Although I want to like make it very clear that even the warehouses that I was working at, like, are nothing compared to what y'all are describing. I feel like I was just on the cusp of the Amazon, like, revolution. But, I was working for one of those staffing agencies that you mentioned, Yvonne, and I was kind of being shuttled to different warehouses and factories around Orange County and LA County. And the one that I ended up working at the longest was in the city of Industry. And the thing that I think about even now is just like growing up in Southern California. I mean, you're driving everywhere, right? You're driving through the Inland Empire, you're driving to the beach, yada, yada, yada. And you almost don't notice how many of these giant beige buildings there are dotting the highway. Or if you're driving through like I said, like if you're driving through Corona, you're driving through Ontario, it's just like this vast sort of brown expanse with these giant hulking buildings that almost sort of blend into the background. And so when you're driving past them, you're like, oh, that's just, I don't know. It's like a part of the landscape. But if you've actually been in one of those things, like how much pain and how much like blood, sweat, and tears is extracted from human beings on a daily basis. And it becomes kind of hard to sit with the fact that you now know what goes on inside those, but they look so nondescript from the outside, right? So like for the average person, they don't know what goes on in there. And so I think it's really important, like y'all were describing, right, for people to understand that beyond those beige walls, right, those nondescript looking buildings, like they're just these incredibly complicated operations, vast arrays of moving machinery, and human bodies, like being broken down on a day-to-day basis to get you your packages, right? To get you all the stuff that ends up in big box stores. That's what we did at my warehouse. Like I can still go into a Bed Bath & Beyond or a JC Penney, right? And see stuff that I know came from that warehouse in the city of Industry. And so like just stop and look around. Think about all the essential labor that's going on around you and how that labor is like meant to become invisible, right? By hiding it behind, these walls, these buildings, like it's everywhere, all around us. And I hope that, the more that we listen to folks like Nannette and Yvonne, we can make that work visible and we can know better how to support folks who are actually fighting to improve their workplaces. And that's where I wanted to come to now. We already started talking about this, but I was wondering if we could kind of just flesh out a bit more what the organizing has looked like in ONT8, right? How that has evolved. If the unionization efforts in Bessemer or Staten Island, like if those have played any role in, the work that y'all are doing. I guess could you just give listeners more of a sense of what that day-to-day work of organizing looks like and what the sort of opposition from management looks like? So Nannette, why don't we go back to you?
Okay, so I started talking to coworkers in my facility about unionizing after I had got my first and only write-up for TOT. And it actually went to a final, which was I didn't get a warning. I didn't get a talking to. I didn't get a first written, second written. They say with that TOT, they could take it straight to a final if they want to. And it stays on my record for 1 year. And if I get any other write-up within the 1 year before that TOT final written gets knocked off, I will be fired. They take it very seriously because they say I'm stealing company time for being time off task. So with that, I started talking to people to try to see what their take on it was. Actually, what did they go through in their department or where they work on the other side of the warehouse? And so I started talking to people at break and at lunch. I would sit by somebody and I would introduce myself and I would ask, so, how long have you been here? And I would let them know how long I've been there. And I would just ask them, so how is it in your department? I've never worked in that area. And then they would start opening up and talk to me and they would tell me some good things. And then they would go into the bad things. And what I got the feel from everybody that I talked to there was it was the same, even though they were in different departments, it was the same thing all around. People were upset about the pace that we had to go at and always getting talked to about it or getting a warning about it, even though we were already going so fast. Because these algorithms they put us all on, it doesn't count for what happens throughout a 10.5 hour day that we're there. Life happens. We're not a machine that just keeps going every minute. We stop because we're tired. We have a coworker that might talk to us and say, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing okay. Do you need any help? So we have conversations with people. Our managers come and talk to us. And there might be accidents that happen, like spillages and glass breaking. So we have to stop and clean it up. We run out of items that we need. So we have to go over to a certain area to pull those items out and stock it back in our workstation so we could use. We have to use the restroom. We need to fill up our water bottle. There's just a lot of things throughout the day that have us stop, with the items. But it seems like those normal things get used against us. And then at the end of the day, before we're ready to clock out, a manager will come to you and say, hey, I need to talk to you really quick. You have TOT. Why? I need to know, else I have to write you up and I have to take it to management to let them know. And that's how it would work all the time. No matter how hard you work, it didn't matter, because if that algorithm came in saying that you weren't fast enough or you took too much time today, you were going to get in trouble. And it felt the same way through every department. People went through the same thing. They were hurting, they were in pain, and it didn't matter. And they felt that they didn't have nobody really there to defend them, to help them. So when I noticed that, I had said, well, why don't we get together and try to unionize? Then that's going to help us make Amazon hear our voices, because right now they don't have to listen to us. It's whatever they say. It's whatever they say goes, and we don't have a say in it. And it comes from the top down, and we have to take and do whatever they tell us. I said, but if we unionize, this is how it can benefit us. And I had written it down on a little card, and I had said, take a look at it, read it. What do you think? And they would be like, this is great. We need something like this because I'm tired of the way they treat me and my department. That's how everybody was. I'm tired of the way they treat me in my department. All around, most of all the departments, they felt the same way. So that's how I started it off. And then from there, I had said, I invited some of them to my house if they wanted to come, more of close friend coworkers that I knew in my department. I started in my department first and said, come to my house. We can talk with somebody and I could show you laws that help protect us to do what we want to do, unionizing. We have laws that can protect us. And so we started that way. And then I would try to tell other coworkers at work that these certain laws protect us, that we're allowed to talk about it. Because it is true what Ivan said, how people felt so scared that they couldn't even say the word union. And if a manager heard it, they'll get in trouble right away. That was the first thing out of people's mouths when I would say union. They were really scared. Oh no, we can't talk about that here. We will get in trouble. They'll fire us. That's how a lot of people felt. So I would try to tell them, no, look, there's this laws, the National Labor Board, these certain laws protect us. We can talk about it, but see, the thing is, it's in certain areas during certain times. So I try to tell them, we're allowed to talk about it on the floor because we're allowed to talk about anything on the work floor. I said, but if we want to give some coworkers literature and stuff, then we'll do that at break and lunch, where we can do it while we're on the tables. I said, so those certain things are there to protect us and we're allowed to talk about it. So that's how I started it off there. And I just kept letting people know about laws that protect us and how we're allowed to do this and how it was going to help us, improve our working conditions there and our pay and our benefits. Because yes, we get benefits, but it's the bare minimal. The medical, Amazon likes to boast about how on day one that you're hired, you get medical benefits. Okay, but the thing is, those medical options they give us are very expensive. so expensive that if I tell people that too, but if we could have a say in it, we could actually get better options. If we unionize, then they would have to hear us and we actually get a say in those benefits because right now they are not good benefits. So I try to tell people that. And the thing is now, since we've reached a spot where we were starting to get signatures because we felt more confident that people understood more what a union was and how it was going to help us and protect us, we started signing cards, authorization cards. But the thing is about that is the law states we have to get 30% of the people that work in our warehouse. But there's not a law that helps us workers get that number. We have no clue how many people work in our facility. So that's what gets me upset is you make a law that says I have to get 30% of my coworkers to sign it, but you don't make a law that makes it able for me to get those numbers. So I know when I hit 30% or how much I need to get for that 30%. So we basically had to guesstimate how many workers actually work there. We had to take our best guess. We had to try to research. We had to do everything we could to try to come up with a number. So that's what we did. And we just came up with a number and thought, yeah, this got to be it. And so when we started signing cards, we felt that we had hit the correct guesstimation number there. So we turned them in to the National Labor Board in LA. And then Amazon told them that we have 2,600 people working there, which we were like, no way. That is way too many. We do not have that amount. But the thing is, I guess we don't know what even kind of proof they had to show to say that they had 2,600. So that's when the National Labor Board said, okay, so Amazon saying you have 2,600, you don't have 30% of their number. So what are you going to do? So I took the cards back out because if I left them there, I would lose them and I'd have to start all over. So I took them back so I can add more on top of that total till I get 30% of what Amazon is saying that we have there of 2,600. And that's why I took them back out. And that's why we still been working on getting those cards signed to hit that 30% mark so I could resubmit them. But starting in October, they brought in a firm and more managers to come in and start to union bust against us. They've been there since October. They're still in our facility to this day, all of them. When now what they're doing is they have a group that comes around to every department, night shift and day shift, and they talk to us while we're at our workstations. And they ask us questions, and they call themselves the special engagement team. They engage the associates. That's what they're called. Yeah. So they come up to us. They ask us random questions. How do we like working there? What would we like changed? How do you feel about, the atmosphere, they say, atmosphere of your facility? And then do you have any questions about what's been going on recently, like this union thing? And then they give their advice their opinion about what they think union is and how they feel about it. And it's negative stuff. So you have these people in here telling you negative stuff about the union. They're allowed to give their opinion about it to us and what they think about it. And then they also have us around the clock going to the captive audience meetings. And they have groups of us go in and they have a projection slide up and they have these slides ready to go. And they talk bad, like negative things about the ALU, how they're brand new, how can they help you? They don't have no experience in making a contract. And then they tell us we could lose benefits. So they started scaring a lot of people by saying that you could lose your benefits. That's what they tell people. Yeah, you could get worse with a contract. We have open door policy. So why do you need a union? Why do you have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars to a union when we hear you out all the time. That's what they tell us. And they have them on these slides and they go through them and they just talk all negative stuff about unions, about the ALU. And then after the ends of their slide, they say, okay, you can go back to work. Then we go to our lunch tables on the break room. They have flyers all over the break room tables talking negative about union and the ALU on the flyers. So they're all over our tables. Then they we have a lot of TV screens in that facility. They have like all the TV screens filled with about what's going to happen if you sign a authorization card. Protect your information. Don't let nobody get it. The ALU could use your dues money to take care of themselves, like offices, and they're not going to spend it on you. And they don't have a crystal ball. They're a business. They're just trying to tell you what you want to hear. They have stuff like that all over the TV screens. They send us text messages. They at the stand-ups, at the morning stand-ups that Ivan had mentioned, the ones we got right before we start work, and then the ones we get right after we come back from lunch, managers are also talking negative about union. So when we go to those before we start working, our own managers are telling us, be careful about unionizing. You could lose benefits. It doesn't mean you're going to get better things. So we're hearing it all day from managers, from their firm they hired, and they even go around wearing manager vest, even though they're not managers there, and some of them are not managers at all. And then I approached one and I said, who are you? You work here because you have a manager's vest on. He said, oh, no, I'm part of the special engagement team. I work at Whole Foods. And I said, what are you doing here? How are you going to help us? He's like, well, I'm part of a special team. That's what we're here for. We're here to hear you out and to help your managers improve your work area. And I said, have you ever worked in a warehouse? He's never even worked in a warehouse. He said, no, I work for Whole Foods. Yeah. And so we have all these different people in there all day just going around talking to us and telling us negative stuff about unionizing. And that's what we're going through on the inside.
So I have many thoughts, but I want to toss it to Ivan. But I just wanted to make sure that, because I forgot to mention this up top, but y'all are working to organize with the Amazon Labor Union at ONT8, correct?
Yes, correct.
Cool. Just wanted to make sure listeners had that down pat. All right, Ivan, what do you got to add to that?
I got hired back again November 4th, 2022 as a seasonal white badge employee. And I was put on paid suspension on December 30th. So I was only there really 2 months. But in those 2 months, even on my first day, at orientation, I was already talking to people like, man, they could pay us way more, can't they? Amazon made $200 billion in profits, buddy. Like, come on, man, they got a contract with the CIA for what? You know what I mean? I heard talking about there's a case where maybe the listeners can go check it out, but the FTC alleged that Amazon, well, I would say it was proven. Amazon stole $61.7 million worth of drivers' tips and wages. And the FTC alleges that what Amazon was doing was they were telling their drivers and the customer that any tips given to the driver go straight to the driver. But what they were doing was lowering the driver's hourly wage and then using the tips to compensate. So I was telling people these things. They made us wear these really ridiculous belts. I'm sure the network knows what I'm talking about. They're there to they're on your waist so that when you bend over, they'll vibrate to let you know, oh no, bend with your legs, not your back. I pushed back so hard on it. I started telling the people right there in front of everybody, this is like Taylorism, yo. This is scientific management. This is ridiculous. I feel like a trained monkey at the circus. What is this? And the guy was like, oh, but they only take some of your data. Oh, some of my data. Oh, that's fine with me, I guess. So the next, we wore them from one day, and the day after I pushed back super hard, we didn't have them anymore. I was just talking to people in my department, just like, so what do you think about Amazon, man? How long have you been here? Oh, I've been here for 2 years. Oh, I've been here for this many years. What do you think? Oh, it's a job. It pays the bills, blah, blah, blah. I had people who were seasonal, obviously for the season, man, I'm just trying to make a little extra money. Some people had some serious complaints. Some people, there's a guy who had worked for Amazon for, I think, like he said, 4 years. He was a PA. He did ambassador, which is like people who train you, you know. He did everything. He laid it out for me. He did everything. and they just treated him like garbage at the end. His manager would not let him apply for like the seasonal manager because, quote unquote, he wasn't ready. And like, you don't do much anyway. And he's like, really? He started naming off all the things. I did Gemba. I did this and that. Morning reports, after work reports, blah, blah. And she's like, well, so he felt really poorly treated. And he came back for like flex. And now he was just working. He's like, I'm not going to do that much for them anymore. I'm going to work hard, but I'm not going to slave away for them. For me, most of my activity was just talking to people. I mean, just calling out the BS of Amazon, all the lies and the low wages. You know, we live in California, one of the most expensive states to live, if not the most expensive, maybe behind New York, if anything. And I was making $17.50 an hour. My dude, that's $700 a week. That's $2,800 a month. Rent here is like minimum in a studio apartment is $1,200. That's already half my money gone. And that's before taxes, right? After taxes, when Uncle Sam gets his cut, I'm left with what? Maybe 24, maybe, you know, it's not enough, dude. I got to pay food. I got bills. I got my car. I got gas. Gas was through the roof in California. So I was doing that, talking to people in the break room, same thing, just with my coworkers, chatting, having a good time, just mentioning these things. And what I found really interesting was how many people know that what I'm saying is true. You know, they know that Amazon is garbage, this and that, but hey, man, it's a job. You know, I got to do what I got to do. You know, Max, earlier you mentioned the whole warehouse, you know, I don't know what you want to call it, the tumor that is growing here everywhere. There's Amazon, all of the IE is just one giant warehouse, in my opinion. Here in my hometown of Paris, we have warehouses that are literally the property line of the warehouse and then houses. And I'm like, well, if you're going to come here to our community, you better pay up, buddy. You know, you're gonna make our community filled with trucks and trailers and traffic and pollution and all this, but you're gonna pay me garbage. You're gonna have to pay up, buddy. The other things I would do was, you know, right now I'm making flyers. We're working on some flyers that we, you know, put on the tables or whatever, calling out just the lies and who are these union busters? Who are they? What's their history? We can check them out on LinkedIn. This is public information. I'm not hacking anybody. We had a rally. We had signs. And I forget on my part, just whatever I did was what I could do, just talk to people mostly, and then making the signs. I won't get into details, like I said, but I can at least mention what more or less happened. So essentially, Amazon has a mask policy with the wear masks. I want to be clear to everybody who's listening. I am not denying that COVID happened. People died. People at our building died. People at many buildings died. You know, it was real. People really did die. My aunt's boyfriend died. My friend's uncle died. I mean, people died. It's been 3 years though. You know, we have the vaccine. We now know more about COVID. We know people have natural immunity. It's not, I don't think it's as needed. Also, the fact that California doesn't require us to wear masks anywhere since April of 2022. You know, I work at a school and I don't have to wear it with children. You know what I mean? So why do I have to wear it with kids? Why do I got to wear it in a warehouse with full-grown adults who can make their own choices? It just doesn't make sense to me. So again, not a COVID denier, but I am critical of the whole, well, why wear masks? Okay, but why? But California doesn't make us wear anywhere else except at hospitals and clinics, which is, I guess, you know, pretty reasonable. It's a hospital, it's a clinic, people are sick. However, what I noticed is that many people do not wear the mask properly. You know, it's either under their chin or under their nose. So I'm thinking, well, then obviously the mask policy isn't taken as seriously as they claim it needs to be taken. There's also a policy of you can't wear headphones on the floor, which is, you know, pretty reasonable. You just got to be safe. I get it. But a lot of people do it anyway. So clearly Amazon is not enforcing these rules that they're claiming are so important for safety or whatever. We don't have to wear the masks in the break room, even though, okay, but isn't COVID serious though? You know, we don't have to socially distance, but I thought it was serious, you know? One of the break rooms in the
Oh, I just wanted to add on real quick, because I know what you're going to go with this, but real quick, on Ivan's defense too, and a lot of people are getting upset about at work, is they took all the barriers down. There are all the plastic barriers between each other on the work floor and in the break room tables. They're all gone. So there is no 6 feet apart. There is no barriers between us. All that is taken down. Everything's taken away. We're even closer to each other in the break room, sitting next to each other, than we are on the work floor working with each other. And in the break areas, you can have your mask off. So that, it doesn't make sense either. On top of that they took all the barriers away. We sit close to each other during lunch and break, and we don't have to have our mask on. But as soon as we cross over to the work floor, you have to have your mask on.
Yeah, and exactly. So this is what I'm talking about. They don't, it's obviously not that serious if they're going to be doing all this, right? There's a break room that I know Nannette frequents. It's the open air break room, the fun zone. They got like, Xbox and PlayStation, like arcade machines. It's inside the warehouse. It's not like it's a hallway behind a wall you got to walk into to get there. It's in the warehouse. So if I can sit there with my friends and laugh and joke and be coughing and all this, and it's all in the air in the warehouse, how does that make any sense? As soon as I cross the green piece of tape, now I got to wear my mask. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And again, many people do not wear the masks, including managers. Well, let me phrase that. People don't wear them properly. Everyone I've seen at least puts it on their face, but it's not worn properly, which is literally the same thing as not wearing it. It's the same thing. So one day I was just, you know what? I'm not going to wear it anymore. If you guys aren't taking this seriously, why should I take it serious? Does it make sense to me? So I just didn't wear it. I just didn't put it on. I was approached by a manager and he's like, hey, Ivan, can you put your mask on? And I was like, Darren, if you're going to tell me to wear my mask, you better be wearing yours properly, buddy. It was under his nose. And he quickly got smart. Put it on his face. And he said, well, you still got to wear it. I was like, well, no, Darren, I don't. I'm not going to wear it. California does not require me. They were telling me this is a Cal OSHA policy. So their implication was kind of like, sorry, it's Cal OSHA. You know how Cal OSHA can be, you know how pesky they can be. But then you Google it and there's no such thing. They have what's called the Emergency Temporary Standards, which is the law when the California Department of Public Health issues an emergency. These laws are already in place so that when there is a COVID emergency, they're already ready to go. We don't have to debate what the rules are going to be. They're already ready to go. We haven't had an emergency of COVID in California since April 2022. Again, I don't have to wear it anywhere in a public space, nowhere, not on a public transport, but I got to wear it at a warehouse. It doesn't make sense. So I told them that, and long story short, they claimed that I was being insubordinate by refusing to wear the mask. And again, can't get into the details, but I told them, well, you guys have to admit there are many people who don't wear the mask properly as it is, including you guys as management. So why am I being harassed? Of all the people who don't do this, there are people who, again, wear headphones, which you're not allowed to do. I don't really care. I think it's fine. The building is not that, what we do is not so dangerous to where headphones are going to cause a problem. But if that's the rule, then you got to follow the rules, right? Quote unquote. Many people go to break really, really early. I mean, break is at 10:15, they're leaving at 10:05. And the break ends at 10:30, they're back at 10:45. You know what I mean? They're not being harassed. They do it every day. You can't be on your phone on the break room in the work floor. I see people Instagramming, Facebook, tweeting, doing all this stuff on their phones, chilling, and they do it every day, and no one tells them anything. So clearly, Amazon's not really following their own policies. Which again, I don't really care if you're on your phone. It's not I don't care. But if the rules are the rules, then that's the rules, guys. Of all the people who do these things in combination, not wear their mask properly, go on a break early on their phones, sometimes don't wear their safety shoes, and no one's getting harassed, no one's getting terminated, no one's getting put on pay suspension. But suddenly the one guy who is vocally pro-union is now being told, well, you got to go home. Sorry, you're being insubordinate. I think it's a pretty clear case that this is just retaliation. I think that's the most I can say. I can't get more into detail, but that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, no, I appreciate y'all kind of laying that out for us, and just wanted to say, as a disclaimer for listeners that, that wheels are in motion to, try to kind of hold Amazon accountable, for this decision, this suspected act of retaliation. So that is like an ongoing process. We will not ask Ivan or Nannette or anyone to kind of comment further on it and possibly jeopardize that process. So just wanted to let folks know that, we'll try to give updates when we can, when there are updates to give. But, that case is still kind of working its way out. So I won't kind of ask y'all to say more, but I thank y'all for laying that out. And I know that I've got to let you both go. I could talk to you for hours, but I just wanted to circle back to one thing that you were saying, Nannette, because this never ceases to amaze me, and I think the only way that I haven't jumped off a bridge because of it is because it's I've seen and heard more workers like yourselves fight against that union busting bullshit, and I'm like, thank God, because it's just so patently ridiculous, and like I was thinking this even when I was down in Bessemer talking to the workers there who were trying to organize, or when I was talking to workers on Staten Island, about these union busting consultants. And it was not lost on the workers either that these outside consultants who were not, employed by Amazon, but were being contracted by Amazon in Bessemer, they were making over $3,000 a day to tell workers who don't make that in a month that the union's going to take, all your pay for union dues, and that the union is like a third party that's going to get in between you and management. I was like, motherfucker, what are you? Right? You're the definition of a third party, right? And Amazon is paying you more than I make in a month to tell me not to unionize. Like, the cognitive dissonance there is just so intense that I almost don't know what to do with myself. And they changed their story based on what they need the outcome to be, right? Well, the outcome they want is to dissuade workers by whatever means necessary from joining a union. But I'm already noticing, even from what you just told me, Nannette, compared to what workers in Bessemer told me, how they will change their story just to get that result. Because in Bessemer, of course, workers there reached out to the RWDSU, an established union that has, unionized warehouses and other facilities around the greater Birmingham area. And so then the Amazon hired union busting consultants were saying, oh, this is like the union is a business. It's a third party. They don't really care about you. They just want to take union dues from you. And then they trotted out all the same talking points that you were saying, like you could lose your benefits, yada, yada, yada. But what I noticed is that when it was an established union, they were like, oh, this is like an outside, bureaucracy that's going to mess things up for you. But then when you guys are trying to organize with the independent Amazon labor union, they're like, oh, that union isn't established. They're not going to be able to help you. It's like, well, you can't have it both ways, man. You're just trying to kind of tarnish the reputation of anyone that we're trying to reach out to for help, or anyone that we're trying to kind of organize with, because they don't ultimately give a shit, right? About, what a union, will be for workers. They just want workers to not unionize, right? That's their ultimate goal. And it just really gives me a lot of hope to hear more from you all and from Amazon workers around the country who are firing back at them and taking apart their union busting bullshit. Because these guys are getting paid way too much to try to scare workers out of exercising their democratic rights to organize in the workplace, right? And so keep it up, right? Because that's I think really important, and it's really great. The more folks that I hear who hear about that, then they go into union busting captain audience meetings and they start firing back the same stuff. So that's what's going to take, is we need to keep educating ourselves, our coworkers, know our rights, and not let them scare us into, forgetting that we have rights in the workplace, and it is not their place to take those away from us. And so with that, before I let you go, I just wanted to sort of ask you guys where things currently stand now at ONT8, and what folks around the country and around the world listening to this can do to show support for y'all as you continue to fight this fight to organize yourselves and your coworkers.
Well, right now we are just working on getting the signatures. That's our main goal. We work on that every day, trying to get people to sign the authorization cards. So from that, we have a Instagram page, and we try to put out as much union information as we can about what's going on there. And that is Union for Amazon. That's our Instagram name. And on there, we even have news articles. We have the link to a GoFundMe if anybody would like to donate to it. And the link, all those links are in the bio on the LinkedIn tree that we made. Yeah. So you can click on that and all that information will come up. And we do rallies outside our warehouse on a little corner on a sidewalk. We'll set up tables. We try to give out food, union shirts, hats, beanies, and buttons, and literature. So we try to get those in people's hands as they're walking by us when they get out of work, and even when the night shift is coming into work. So we try to get out there, and if anybody ever, if they see a post that we're holding a rally, if anybody wants to come out and participate and help us out, that'd be great. The more people, the better, I feel. I think it also helps workers feel more relaxed and safe that there is a lot of people who support us. And I think that makes people less scared when they see a lot of people at the corner supporting the union drive. So that's what we are currently working on right now.
Yeah, I think Nannette pretty much summed it up. I don't really have much to add, except, yeah, if you live in the area, if you live in Southern California and you can make the drive to Moreno Valley or Paris, California, you want to meet at the rally, be there. We can make some signs. You can help us out, hand out our literature, talk to people. That's pretty much all I have to add, really. Thank you for having us.